Hey, it's Scott once again. And last time I came to you, I talked about the concept of improvise, adapt, and overcome. Something I've written about before, something I've spoken on video before in my old Great Resources for Coaches YouTube channel, and also on our podcast. I think it was around episode 35. I forgot to mention Judd Damon's name, the athletic director down at Flagler University in Florida, who talked about that quote, and I talked about how much I had used it in my earlier days, or early on, starting in the late 80s after seeing the movie Heartbreak Ridge, mid-80s maybe. And then using that, and then our principal here in our town, Gary Kane, who hired me in 2010 to be our athletic director, using that a lot with people. You improvise, you adapt, you overcome. And I talked about that concept and the importance of it for the variety of things that we have thrown at us. And at the end of that video, I said that this week I wanted to talk about the concept of change, because a lot of times to do the overcome, you have to change, which I guess would fall into the improvising and adapting, right? And yet so many people are hesitant to change, don't like change. Last week, from when I am recording this, so it might be a couple of weeks ago, I wrote a blog post called Don't You Want to Get Better? And in it, what I was saying is I'm always amazed at the number of people out there who I've known who are hesitant to do the things that they need to do to get better. And I was focused in that post about people not wanting to be evaluated, people struggling to be critiqued or criticized in any way. Well, how are you going to get better if you never think you're wrong, never think you need to get better? And so that was my focus in that post. And then my real focus was, and I'm totally blown away when these are teachers and coaches who act this way. They are the very people who that's what their job is, to critique, evaluate, criticize others. And yet they can't make mistakes themselves. They can't be evaluated themselves. Absolutely drives me nuts. I watched it in my years as an athletic director, having to evaluate coaches. I watched it in all my years watching my wife as a principal of a middle school deal with teachers who just could not be evaluated. Oh, how dare you? I think I had that in the post. How dare you, tell me I need to do something different? I know what I'm doing. For me, for so many years, even when I wasn't an athletic director, I saw this with older coaches, older entrenched teachers who they feel like, I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this long enough. I've been doing this longer than you've been in it, blah, blah, blah. It's like, you can't get better? Of course you can. You just don't want to change. In fact, you don't want to have something pointed out to you that maybe you need a little bit of work at. And so many people are paralyzed by the fear of some kind of change. My gosh, change is a great thing, okay? What do they say? Change is inevitable, growth is optional. It's true, change is inevitable. There are going to be changes, right? Why not get on the front end of those and kind of lead yourself through those changes so that you can then grow into whatever it is that you want to grow into. And so here I was going to talk about this today, and then I was just watching Colin Cowherd's show, The Herd. You've heard me quote him before. Well, I do in the podcast, the Great Quotes for Coaches podcast. You've heard me quote people on his show before, and him a couple times. But he just was talking about this concept of change because of all the mobility in college football right now, all of the coaches going to all these different places. And he's always talking about the power of mobility. And I totally agree. There's a part of me that's jealous of my friends in the teaching and coaching profession who I've known who've stayed at the same school for 30 and 40 years. My best friend, Bob Kuykendall. Check out episode, I can't remember what episode Bob was. Somewhere in the 40s, I think, of the Great Quotes for Coaches podcast, the most downloaded one that we had. He's been at the school that we started teaching and coaching at for 40 years. This is his 40th year. I'm jealous of guys like him in a lot of ways. And yet, I'm not jealous of them in other ways. I have started there in the Chicago area, moved here to Livingston, Montana, went to Darby, Montana for a year, then back here, moved to Arizona for a year, moved to the Yakima Valley in Washington for 8 years, moved back here to Livingston for the last, whatever it's been now, 11 years. we've had mobility. Now, some of it, it caused upheaval in our lives. Oh, sorry, and I forgot Georgia. We moved to Georgia to take care of my father-in-law because of his Alzheimer's. And now we're back up here. We've had upheaval, and it's like, it's not easy. But you know what? The experience I've had going to each of those places, I can't replicate that. And it's been outstanding. And I've learned so much. And I have so many friends all around the country and so many acquaintances and so many connections in this world of teaching and coaching in those places. I didn't teach and coach in Arizona, so I don't have that. But I still have friends that are down there. The concept of change is not to be feared. It's a positive. And so Cowherd was saying, there was a study years ago, and he was just talking, so I don't know what the study is, but where they had, I think it was a college study. No, it was people who were out of college. And they were part of this study, and they were going to flip a coin. And if yours landed heads, you had to make whatever some major change was in their life, okay? If it was tails, you didn't have to make any change. Who would like to try that? And they had to do it. They flipped. And those who landed on heads, a lot of them were, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do it. But they had to. That was part of being part of this study, and they were probably paid or whatever. He said that 10 years later, or however long later, when they followed up with these people, they found that the majority, the overwhelming majority of those people who had to make the change were a lot happier, felt a lot better about their lives. And I can totally understand that. Right? Yes, my wife and I will sometimes bemoan the fact that, boy, every time we moved, we had to take a pay cut, or this kind of thing happened, or whatever it was. And yet, I look at it as every time we move, it enriched our lives. It brought my son, my stepdaughter, to new places in this country that they never would have been before. And it brought them a new enrichment, a new appreciation for things. My son loves to travel now. He loves to go, and he's lived in Livingston, Montana. He lived in Arizona for a short year, wouldn't remember it. He lived in the Yakima Valley in Washington. He's at college in Atlanta. He has gone a variety of places around the South. We've gone to Chicago, where I'm from. We've gone to Michigan, where my wife is from. I mean, he's gotten this wide experience of life, and it's made him want to see the world and see the country. And I love that for him, and about the concept of change. So don't be afraid of change. Change is a good thing. But the more you can get out in front of the change and kind of lead the charge to your change, the better off you're going to be. So embrace it, seek it, and enjoy it, because it's true that change is inevitable, but the growth from it is optional. Talk to you again next time.